Long, long, long time ago when we was fab. Back when income tax was all we had, brothers. Love and peace. Peace and love. Well, hello everybody and welcome in to this Saturday's, whatever this is called. We have still not come up with a name for this, Stephen. I think we've been doing this now for the best part of half a year.
Yeah, definitely. The turn of the year we started doing this podcast style show.
No name for it. It's just the MBE podcast. the movie burner hour. Remember that back in the day? When we had done the podcast and we committed to an hour and you could feel and hear the terror in my voice. Well, hello and welcome to the movie burner hour. Anyway, I digress, Stephen. We're here to talk about Star Wars. Kings of the Galaxy, fighting for you and I, fighting for me, Star Wars. But first and foremost, Stephen, now that I've got that excitement out of my system, incidentally, it's BFI, British Film Institute, over here, have discovered an heirloom in regards to Star Wars, and we'll get into it. We'll get into that. That's the main sort of topic of discourse. But Stephen, obviously, we had terribly sad news over the week that the late great former Beach Boys sort of maverick, all hearing, all seeing singer, songwriter, melodist Brian Wilson had passed away at the age of, I think, 82, 83. Obviously, we are massive music fans, me and you. Stephen, I'd say, admittedly, that you're perhaps more knowledgeable about the Beach Boys than I am. I was always more of a Beatles, Stones, Kinks kind of guy. But I do respect them tremendously as a band for what they brought. Also, the whole surf scene, incredible songs, Pet Sounds, all the momentous music in there. God only knows, just watching Rick Beatle, phenomenal channel on YouTube, having an interview with Hans Zimmer from an unknown date. And he asked Hans of examples in his mind of perfect songs, and he named God Only Knows. And obviously Brian Wilson's fingerprints are all over that. So utterly incredible musical mind, genius. Obviously a guy who had a lot of issues in his life, had a bit of a breakdown, a lot of stuff going on, went out of the limelight for a long time, gained a lot of weight and stuff like that, but a phenomenal figure. And sadly, I've said it again and again, we're losing people like this now, and it's fucking saddening, man.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of comments over the last few days in terms of social media and talking about Brian Wilson and, you know, just the life that he had. He was, you know, a lot of people saying they were amazed that he got to 82 years old, but it's still sad. You know, it's always sad when someone that you were aware of most of your life passes, and Brian Wilson's no exception. John, you're absolutely right. I think in terms of obviously our focus and the bands that we like from that period, certainly I wouldn't say the Beach Boys was probably maybe in our top three, but certainly they were always around our household, and it was always that surf sound, of course, but Pet Sounds, I know we'll talk about it in a bit, John, in terms of its influence on the Beatles and the sort of reaction from both camps around about that time, 1966, 67. But it wasn't really till, I think maybe when I watched Love and Mercy, I think I reviewed it on our website as well a few years ago. A phenomenal film about his life. Two periods in his life, one obviously during the Beach Boys sort of era in the 60s, and then again in the 1980s, going through a lot of psychological issues and drug issues, etc., addiction. It was a phenomenal. Paul Dano played the young one.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal actor.
John Cusack played the older version of Brian Wilson. And I've spoke about this time and time again about I'm not really interested in biopics, etc. But this was an exception because I wasn't really looking for an impression of Brian Wilson, an actor, because John Cusack looks nothing like Brian Wilson, but another great actor.
We spoke about that though, Stephen, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know too much about Brian Wilson.
Just...
Yeah, all the brothers, Carol and Dennis, you know, and obviously they've sadly passed as well now. That's them all away. But it wasn't really till that film came out, and then I started taking a bit more interest in the the recording of Pet Sounds and just what he was up against in terms of trying to get his message across to the rest of the band members, having to bring in other musicians to play certain parts. Because they were family, you know, so there's going to be a bit of tension there. You know, if we've got, I don't know if it was true about never fuck with the formula. I'm not really sure if Mike Love ever said that or whoever said that. I don't know whether that's true or not. Maybe someone in the comments section.
You have to expand your horizons as an artist, as a band.
It was a brave thing to do, yeah. And you know, and just looking at I've seen some of the documentary stuff as well, and I know there was a Disney Plus one that came out last year, which I've still to watch, which I probably will get around to watching now. But just his impact on popular music as well, you know, just in that period and what happened afterwards, obviously with his Smile album as well, the sort of issues the other band members had with obviously the direction he was trying to take the band in. So a lot of frustration from Brian Wilson in terms of where he was trying to take them and where they were wanting to stay and wanted to remain. But nevertheless, John, when you look about and you talked about Paul McCartney there, and we had a conversation just before we came on about John Lennon's meeting through Alice Cooper's narrative. But when you look at the Beatles, particularly in that period, they were in their own little isolation bubble. They weren't interested in what everyone else was doing. They were only interested in what they were doing. But then Pet Sounds came around and they took notice. Yeah. Paul McCartney took notice. John Lennon took notice of this album, and it turned their heads. So I know that Paul McCartney's talked about it, and I think I've seen footage of it, that he can't sing God Only Knows without breaking down. It's just one of those songs, I think.
A phenomenal song, Stephen. It's one of the legendary songs. Just everything, the way it's constructed, the vocals, the melody. It's just there was an advert out not long ago, a couple of years ago, that was using the sort of end of God Only Knows. I'm pretty sure it was God Only Knows anyway. But it's just a phenomenal song. I mean, like I says, I can't sit here and speak with any real confidence on the Beach Boys and their discography. I know the great sort of hits that they brought out, and I'm aware of the power of the sort of siblings and their harmonies, and you can never really replicate that. I know the Beatles weren't related and they had some brilliant harmonies in the likes of Yes It Is and This Boy and a couple of other great songs, Paperback Writer, but there's just something about, you hear it in the Bee Gees as well, something about siblings. They have the same sort of, don't know how you'd even explain it, frequencies.
Yeah, the same. I think it's the same vocal cords almost, John, replicated. Everly Brothers is a good example of that. Yeah,
there's something special about it. So I mean, it's a legendary song. So I can totally understand why it hits him hard. Guys like Paul McCartney and people, his peers of the time, will have nothing but will have had, in John's case, because he's no longer with us, nothing but pure respect for the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson, because they, as great sort of musical minds, would realise what they were living in at that moment. It's something I don't think we've replicated as sort of species. That 60s, 70s era, where it was just pure creative brilliance. I don't know if it was the time, the harshness of life after the Great Wars, lack of money, there was just an explosion. It was really conservative, and then there was an explosion of independence and just discovering things. The fact that perhaps music was a little bit more basic prior to Chuck Berry and Elvis and guys like that, and also the great blues artists from America at the time coming through. There was just so much to explore in terms of keys and chord changes and structure in the songs. But Stephen, I mean, I can't imagine, I've spoken about this with you before with the Beatles and stuff like that, hearing those songs for the first time in that era. It's different now, listening to it, because you've had so much desensitization, if that's even a word, to other songs and music. You're used to hearing fresh and different things. But you wouldn't have heard something like Pet Sounds and God Only Knows back then. The first time you hear that, it's fucking revolutionary. You wouldn't have heard Sgt. Pepper's or even She Loves You. That's revolutionary moments in sort of musical and pop cultural history. You're hearing that for the first time, and it's fundamentally shaking up how music's listened to and how it affects the masses. It was an unbelievable time. I'd imagine to be alive and whilst I don't want to be as old as these people, I do in some part wish I was fucking around at that time just to hear it. Because it's just, I mean, that's why I need to get round to finishing that Audie Kay book, because just to pick her mind, if we can get that interview done, because she's perfectly sort of sums that up in her book, just discovering all these bands and these new songs coming out, seeing them live, just how incredible a time it was to be alive. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me he's breaking down listening to that song, because it's a peer, it's a guy that's genuinely on that level, producing something special. So
I think so, John, and then, I think after obviously watching that film and then my oldest daughter, she went down a Beach Boys sort of, I think she particularly liked Dennis, he was a good looking guy, so it's hard not to like him, but she just went down that sort of, that road, and I took an interest just to see the other sort of stuff away from the hits, if you like, more album tracks and stuff like that. Just, yeah, I mean, they were very tight band, obviously when Brian wasn't, at the forefront with them, he was still obviously doing the arrangements and stuff like that, and then there was a period where he wasn't involved at all. I think they had a hit in the 1980s called Kokomo, and he wasn't. It was nothing to do with him. I think he is on record saying that he liked the song, didn't realise it was a Beach Boys song. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's sad, But when you look back at his life, just the trials and tribulations of his health and his psyche as well. I'm glad he got to 82. And I think it's two wonderful daughters he's got, Carney and Wendy, who harmonised on. He did do it again with them in the late 80s, I think it was. I think Jim Keltner, the drummer from the Travelling Wilburys, and so many other artists they worked with, he was doing the drums on this version, and both his daughters were harmonising for him, and you can just see how proud he was in this video with them doing the harmonies. But it was just sad news, really, just to find out. It was 82, I get it, and but it never comes as it always comes as a great surprise, a great shock.
Stephen, I don't know about you, but in my mind, when I hear these names, I just visualise them as they were in their sort of peak years. Yeah. I'm always shocked when I see Paul McCartney and whatnot now, because it's like, Jesus Christ, because I just picture him mid-60s.
You think
I think him as being eternally young. So, but Stephen, we've both been around family members with dementia, and obviously sadly suffering with dementia in his later years, amongst a whole host of other things. I mean, that story you told or shared about Alice Cooper and John Lennon, I didn't actually know he was suffering. I knew he had a sort of mental breakdown. And we've seen this before with the likes of Brian Jones in the past, where people do suffer mentally with the fame and the adulation and people invading into their space. It's not normal.
Sometimes they're genius, John, as well.
Genius in that. Well, I mean, we've seen that with the Kinks as well. Stephen Dave Davies had issues with sort of schizophrenic episodes. You tend to find that these incredibly talented people, they're almost teetering on the edge of sanity. You kind of have to be in that sort of sweet spot to make magic happen. I mean, John Lennon had these moments where he teetered into violence at times, and that's where you've got to be. You've kind of got to be in this precipice where you're almost touching the insanity to get the absolute magic happening. But he suffered with schizophrenic stuff as well, so that doesn't really surprise me now when you tell me of that story, that he's perhaps had episodes. And at that time, they maybe weren't as well versed in what to do with those kind of disorders. Yeah. But Stephen, being around people, I've been around my great uncle, my grandfather passed away with dementia. It's a fucking horrible illness, man. It robs people of their independence, of their sort of memories and just knowledge of their family, their closest family members. It's a horrible, horrible thing to go through for not just the individual, but for the people round about. So even though it's tragic the man's passed away, in the end, as I said to you when you messaged me about it, ultimately you've got to think about where the guy was in his life. He got to 82, he overcame a lot of adversity. He's almost at peace now from that god-awful disease, and ultimately, legendary musical figure, iconic, influential guy who will live long in the memories of multi-generational levels of sort of humans. It's like called? It's No Gallagher, Live Forever. I always think of that. I don't know if that's what he meant when he wrote the song, but you live forever through the people you've sort of impacted on in life, your influence, be it through music, art, film. If you can leave an impact, then residually you'll always be there in the lives of everyone, and that's all you can ask for.
You have to be in that level, John, I think, even if, just family level, if you've got that connection and that bond, if any of your family, which you should have, but I mean, I think you leave that impression on people and they'll remember you, and it's how you live on,
Yeah, that's all we can ask for in the end, is leaving an impact, changing people's lives for the better, and he certainly did that. Fucking sad we've lost the guy, but that's just life, man. Sadly, as we all get older, it just becomes inevitable, really. We're all on this ride, and we're all going out the same way. Some of us don't go out the same way. And that's just, that's why I ultimately believe George, in the long run, in terms of the Beatles, was the wisest. Because he went down that transcendental route, and he became an incredibly wise guy, who I think at the end didn't even fear death, because he realised it was the body's a vessel. And life is energy never dissipates, and we'll all go on an experience when it finally comes. I don't know what it's going to be. So yeah, sad news, man.
I'll send you a video I found on Instagram. It's in sort of terms of what you've just been describing there. I'll send you across. It's actually quite enlightening what comes next.
No, I've seen a lot of stuff.
We were obviously, you don't want to get all spiritual here and deep, but basically it's a video about when you're in the womb, you're obviously not conscious. You don't obviously you're not educated or have a knowledge of anything, but there's everything that comes after it. If you put yourself back in that position, you wouldn't believe what's to come. Exactly. So is this the next stage? That's basically it. But it's a great video. I'll send you it. It's very enlightening.
Stephen, I fundamentally, I really do believe in it. I don't know if it's Buddhism or whatnot, but these sort of tailless monks and whatnot, what they were able to do in sort of deep meditative states, self-immolation, and just crazy preservation of their body, and it's not really been mummified. I think they've cracked it. I think there is levels of consciousness. I think there's levels of sort of reality. I'm not going to go all deep here because it's not the time or place for it, but I'm very interested in that sort of stuff, and I do believe Harrison had the right sort of path when he was going down that route. I know the others mocked him when he went over to India. To an extent, they weren't really on board. But I mean, I think he was definitely onto something, and it's ultimately why when things like this happen, it's terribly sad that we've lost such a brilliant mind and brilliant person, but I don't think it's the end. I really don't.
Paul McCartney did right, John, on that piece of paper. There are seven levels.
Yeah. So, and John had a great quote as well. He doesn't fear death because he doesn't view it as being the end. It's like getting out of one car and going into another. So maybe he did take something from it. But I digress now. We've got all that deepness out of our fucking minds. We're going to move on to something that's not really that deep, but then in a strange way it kind of is, because it's Star Wars, Stephen. And Star Wars means a lot to a lot of people. And certainly this particular version, I have never seen the original 1977 cut of Star Wars. So this is monumental in terms of what is this, Stephen?
We have a comment.
Oh, do we? Sorry, I didn't see it. I'm going to have a look at the comment. There was a screening of Star Wars 1977 where, well read bear, 1789. It was streamed, I believe, here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Although I don't think it was in Northern Ireland. I think it was in England somewhere. I'm not even going to lie with you or lie to you. I didn't actually read the full article, so I'm not entirely... I actually watched the video that Stephen sent over, which was really fascinating. That's the video there, by the way, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I mean, it was a screener. They found the original film reels from back in 77 from a version which was obviously shown here in the United Kingdom. BFI, that is, British Film Institute. And they announced a screening which kicked off the second film on Film Festival Thursday, 12th of June. Obviously, a lot of people then started doing the rounds on Reddit and whatnot, questioning whether this was legitimate, whether it was an illegal screening. And also Kathleen Kennedy, the much maligned, who seems to be warming as she gets older, maybe coming to the end of her tenure as Lucasfilm president, came out and confirmed that the screening was indeed legitimate, and she was there to make sure that people didn't think it was an illegal screening. She popped up, I believe, at the screening and introduced the actual showing of the film. Stephen, this is fucking momentous, man. I mean, the fan base has been calling out for this for years and years and years, not just for A New Hope, but for the full trilogy, original trilogy, to the point where there's whole sort of sections of the Star Wars fandom who have dedicated decades of their lives to trying to despecialise the original films. They're trying to recreate what it was like to see these films in their original form. Now we could potentially have A New Hope. Original cut has been legitimised by Kathleen Kennedy, Lucasfilm president. We've seen a whole host of re-releases hitting the theatres over the last few years. Surely this isn't going to be an exclusive to this film festival event. Surely we will, now that this has been unearthed and legitimised, we will now get a wide release of this. I would be first in fucking line to go and see this in the theatres. Never seen the originals. I don't know about you, Stephen. I've only ever seen the special editions from 97, I believe, and onwards.
John, there was a 2014 so of a certain print. I think it was from Laserdisc or something like that, but certainly wasn't at this level. It's interesting to see that Kathleen Kennedy says that. Even when I came into the company in 2012, there was an endless conversation about everything was and what was, in fact, the first print. And it's quite remarkable. What you're going to see is, in fact, the first print. The fact she confirmed that, that's incredible. But I don't know, John. It depends. It really depends on George Lucas and his conditions when he signed over the deal, whether or not that's for public or not. I know there's obviously been a very select, lucky few that have seen this print.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether or not we will see it or not. I'm kind of. I mean, obviously I can't remember what the institute is, John. The American Film Institute. It's put the original
in the sort of archives. Yeah, it's one of the sort of top 100 films or something.
Yeah.
Most influential films. They chose them and they put them in this sort of vault. Yeah. The original versions, and obviously George wasn't acquiescing with that. He was trying to put the special edition version in. He says, look, it was incomplete. I didn't have the technology at the time. This is my complete vision now. That's all well and good, George, but that's not the films, for good or bad, that changed the world. That's not the film that created the whole thing. The film that created everything was the original. And that's the one that made the list. That's the one that they wanted in the vote. And it kind of...
It's a very interesting sort of position George Lucas found himself in, and it was all his own doing in terms of, I get why he did the special editions with obviously the plan of episode 1, 2 and 3 being released, in a few years' time when those were released in 1997, John, and it was really just to sort of upscale the quality and special effects, to make it a seamless transition from episode to episode. I get that. I do understand why he did it. What I don't understand is some of the decisions he made.
Yeah.
For some of the special editions. But I mean, I went to see them. I thought they were great. Not as good, but still great in terms of seeing them in the cinema. Just having that opportunity to see those 3 films in the cinema. Although they were special editions, it was still the only one we were going to get. And he was adamant,
Stephen.
And he probably still is adamant to this day that that's the only ones you'll get. But I don't know the conditions. I don't know the sort of legalities of Lucasfilm and can they release this version? I'm not sure.
Hopefully there's none. I don't see the whole issue with releasing the original. We've still got the special edition versions. You can make a choice. We're all adults. Which one we prefer, which one we want to continue watching. Choice should always be there. If you've got the original cut, and George was adamant it didn't exist anymore, well, he was wrong.
He said that, John, when there was when the 3 Star Wars films, the original trilogy, came out in special edition in 97. There was a documentary sort of accompanying it, and it had Gary Kurtz in it, and obviously the producer for the special editions and the prequels, Rick McCallum, and all the different sort of heads from Lucasfilm and ILM. And they took you back to the condition of what was the original print, at that time, what they thought was. It was at the stage that if they didn't do it, this was the words, paraphrasing slightly, but if they didn't do anything about it, then they would have lost it forever, the original print that is. Yeah. But it goes to show, I don't think he was lying or anything. He probably did believe that was the only one they had.
Do we think this is as Kathleen Kennedy said, the first cut? Because I find that hard to believe that the British Film Institute have got the original cut. When obviously George was in Tunisia, I know he did a lot of work in Britain. In fact, the film was shot in Britain, wasn't it, Pinewood? So maybe it is. But I just find it hard to believe that is the very first cut. Obviously, look, I'm not as knowledgeable when it comes to what's the provenance of it compared to Kennedy. She's the actual Lucasfilm president. I'd imagine she would know more of its provenance compared to some gimp in Glasgow who's chatting shit on the internet. So maybe she's right. But Stephen, at that video we've seen, I mean, I watched it, what's that, solid 9 minutes long, and you can see in the actual film the brilliance of the shots. You can see C-3PO and R2-D2. It's remarkable. And what they go into in the actual video, explaining why Technicolor, much maligned, how it's actually probably the best in terms of preservation of the original shots, and in fact, as it ages, it almost becomes more brilliant, the colours. It was a fascinating, I love that kind of stuff. It's one of the things I loved when Star Wars Celebration was originally coming out. I say originally, when it was coming out about 10 years ago, you get to see the nuts and bolts of what goes on behind the scenes in making films, the animators, even going back to the prequels, the DVD extras, you had the likes of, is it Doug Chang? Doug Chang. And he was, I'm blanking on the young man who was the original matte painter. Jesus Christ. Ralph McQuarrie. Doug Chang, was he an animator, or was he the guy who took over from Ralph as the sort of matte painter?
I think he took over from him. I think he was in and amongst, obviously being at Lucasfilm and ILM, and just but obviously for the storyboards and stuff like that, he was the man for the prequels.
But getting to see that process of how they put the film together, it's always something that's fascinated me. Process of the effects, of behind the scenes, of how they sort of mobilise all of the crew and the teams and directing units and stuff. It's something I've always been incredibly fascinated by, how you put these blockbuster films together. So watching that, also we don't get to see that level of insight, but just getting to see, even I've fucking done it with Beatles as well, the original tapes from, like Parlophone tapes from the OG Beatles albums. It's something that was quite geeky, but I do enjoy it tremendously. That was a fascinating watch, getting to see historic reels of tape that's changed the entire sort of film landscape. I mean, I'm not over-egging it here. I genuinely believe this, along with maybe Kubrick. It's probably the most influential sort of group of films. You think of Space Odyssey 2001, you think of this, you think of Jaws and Blade Runner. Those are the kind of like science fiction, horror kind of films that shaped the genre moving forward.
John, it's funny, you talked about obviously the technicolor aspect of it, and it says it in this documentary, which I didn't know, it was the only Star Wars film ever filmed in technicolor. And just off obviously us watching Andor, I went right into Rogue One, and then from Rogue One into A New Hope.
Oh, you went down that rabbit hole again, Stephen, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, but it's not going to. And people saying it just runs right into it. In terms of narrative, it definitely does, and aesthetic. But to a point when I say aesthetic, but you can still see that Star Wars, as it's later dubbed A New Hope, it's still a product of its time, in terms of the way it's acted and some of the dialogue, and the pacing of it as well is definitely different.
Yeah.
So it still has that, obviously, that vibe to it. It always will. There's nothing you can do about it. And I wouldn't want to change it anyway. It's, I'm always swaying, and we talk about, obviously, the best Star Wars film, and most people will say Empire, but I'm always changing my mind. I'm always saying Star Wars is still the one for me. It's the one that changed everything in terms of, not just... just sci-fi or space opera, whatever you might want to call it in terms of genres, but in terms of the technology that they were experimenting at the time, film techniques with the cameras, the systems they were using, the animations they were using, just everything about it. Just it was so. There was nothing like it before, and I don't think there's anything been like it since in terms of changing things. Of course, we got Empire Strikes Back, we got Return of the Jedi, and then everything else that came after it. But there's never been another film that's had that impact, that's changed everything.
I can't think of any.
Influenced James Cameron and Ridley Scott, and incredible, and I think Ridley Scott was part of that documentary where he said, he was making low budget films at the time, and he saw Star Wars and it just made him rethink his whole life. What am I doing?
I've seen that from other
filmmakers. He obviously did Alien, so
that's it. You wouldn't have got any of these other movies coming out if it wasn't for Star Wars, if it wasn't for those, what did they say, 6 reels of tape and a mini one for the screen, the opening crawl. It's just fascinating to see the actual physical film, legendary film that's changed everything for so many people, that's impacted and influenced so many people's lives, including myself. Just the wonder and the escapism it's brought as a franchise as a whole, all in that sort of, in those tapes. It's fucking incredible to see that, how kind of humble it is and what it brought. But Stephen, I agree with you in terms of, I personally still think Empire Strikes Back is the greatest Star Wars movie because it's so radical. I don't know if up until that point we'd ever seen the bad guy win out in a film. I don't know if that was the very first time in terms of a mainstream movie. We kind of subjected the expectations and had the bad guys win. It was such a dark movie, different completely to the original, but in terms of the actual influence and just the processes they went through to make the movie and the humble nature, the independent nature, him fighting against Hollywood and the establishment to make it happen. It's hard not to overlook the original Star Wars, just ping pong tables and the props and the ingenuity, the editing, last minute editing to make it what it was. The sheer acting talent in the original movie from 77, I don't think the rest compare. You've not got Alec Guinness, you've not got Peter Cushing, 2 classically trained, brilliant English actors who were fucking incredible movie figures before Star Wars. And you've got those 2 guys in the original film. I know Harrison went on to have a brilliant career, but I can't think of anybody that touches them in Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. So when
obviously had cameos.
He was in there, but not to the level of the original. He's sitting on a fucking log as a Force ghost talking about. There is another. No, was that him that said that?
That was Return of the Jedi. Obviously he plays his part, but I don't know if that was a contractual thing or not. But I've seen Alec Guinness in numerous interviews. He won out of it. 70s, early 80s, and sort of early 90s as well. And he's done so much, and he did so much, I should say, in his career. And Star Wars was just a part of that. It wasn't the biggest part, although it was his biggest payoff. I think he had 2% or something. I can't remember the percentage. Obviously, incomes and obviously
2%
Guinness,
the profit.
The benefits of that.
It was 2%, wasn't it, of the sort of residual profits of the franchise? You think of how much money those films have made. Yeah. My God, that was a smart business decision.
Like, I don't know. I don't know where I saw it, but it was something. I don't know. Something between 5 and 10 million per year. The estate gets just with that deal.
Was it not in Parkinson? That he did that interview and he spoke about it.
Yeah,
it's just. I love Alec Guinness. The guy is just.
It
was a brilliant. That's Parkinson for you. One of the great interviewers. He always managed to get brilliant sort of snippets out of people. But Guinness is fucking incredible. That's a whole other thing. Just unbelievable actor. I grew up watching Bridge Over the River Kwai with my grandfather and whatnot, so I was well aware of this guy. Stephen, I realised I was talking shit when I says I hadn't seen anything pre-special or the special editions, because I was aware of Star Wars in 95 as a kid when we moved into another house, and the guy who owned it before left a sort of ottoman full of fucking toys, and there was Tusken Raiders, Sand People. So I was aware in 95, that was special editions. So I must have seen some variant of the original.
I think the only sort of altercation, things that really changed, between 77 and probably 1995 was perhaps maybe the opening crawl.
Yeah.
Being rebranded, obviously, Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope. That changed, obviously, when Empire Strikes Back came out. But you're right, John, there wouldn't have been many I
was too young, though, to remember.
Yeah, I mean, there wouldn't have been...
I can't
because,
remember.
I mean, they didn't have the technology. And I don't think he was even thinking about that till Jurassic Park came out in 93, so... Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I don't remember a time now, and I think this is the way, that George Lucas hopes generations will go, in terms of going forward with those films, that people, will just not remember the original releases, but there are still a lot of people out there that do remember them, my age group, and obviously people that are older.
And that's why this is so important.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, and I think this is why perhaps maybe George Lucas has something in their terms, that will be released to the public. But
George, I'm sorry, mate. I'm Team George.
It's one of the few times that I'm siding with Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, get it out there. I mean, it'll make a fortune.
I'd love to be in the cinema and see that.
Oh, I mean, that'd be an unbelievable experience to watch the original film. I understand some of it will probably be pretty corny now in terms of what we're accustomed to, but from a purely historical standpoint, to see the original as it was seen in 77, just listening to those guys in that video, it was almost like a out-of-body experience. Handling the reels, looking at it, watching it, they were transported. The guy says it was like being transported back to a theatre in 77, listening to the way the music and the sort of score was enveloping them. Just something about the technology involved in capturing it. It's just,
I did like the bit that he did. It showed you on screen, the moment in the reel just before the Star Wars logo pops up, and it's such an iconic moment because that's when the John Williams music kicks in, just when the Star Wars logo appears, and he actually pinpointed the actual line where that, obviously transitions into the sort of burst of the logo and the John Williams theme kicking in, and it was just incredible to watch.
See when you think of that, I mean, I wonder how much thought went into that, into the pan down and then the logo. Or the logo then panning down, that moment where it pans down, because that's such an iconic moment in a Star Wars movie. And it's why when they released those sort of Star Wars story kind of movies, I was incredibly disappointed we didn't have that. There was something, even though the prequels are not on the level of the originals, they're still, I think, not as bad as they were made out at the time. There's issues in there, but there's some redeeming factors as well. But getting to see them in the theatre at the time, and experiencing that music, iconic music, and then dipping down, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Obviously, Revenge of the Sith, you've got the drum beat, but and it dips down. There's something about that. It's just fucking irreplaceable as an experience in a theatre. Magical. You wonder how much went into that.
I know we've not spoke about the actual sequel trilogy, but the opening couple of minutes to The Force Awakens was pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
Just that, as you said, panning down, you've got the First Order ship going over Jakku, and then those little sort of ships going down to the planet itself, to attack that village. It was incredible, but it's something that Star Wars have always been good at.
I mean, it's still John Williams, Stephen.
Perhaps maybe not The Last Jedi because you were just continuing on. There was no time jump or anything like that, but everything else in terms of that opening crawl, the logo, John Williams music, the panning down from the first film is something that other films have tried to do. Out with Spaceballs, of course.
In terms of the score in The Force Awakens, I mean, it's some brilliant work in there. The Kylo Ren theme is brilliant. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, it's a great theme. And the way he kind of reworked the Leia theme, I think it was Leia and Han. And then I think there may have been an element, I don't know if it was in this movie, it may have been in The Last Jedi, to be fair, with the Yoda theme. He did do a great job of remixing and reworking the legendary themes. Stephen, I don't know about you, I know we're getting sidetracked here, but fuck it. But in terms of the actual themes, obviously the dual sunset sort of stuff is iconic. That's Star Wars for me. to the point where I had it as my fucking wallpaper for the longest time. Look, I've got a painting, an original painting of Luke overlooking the dual sunsets on Tatooine. That for me defines Star Wars. But in terms of my favourite theme, I don't know if you have got a specific theme that you have as a favourite, but for me it's the Yoda theme. The Yoda theme is fucking incredible. You think of sort of Dagobah, you can picture him. It's just such a brilliant theme, and it just embodies the character so well. That's for me what John Williams, that's what makes him such a special composer. His ability to take a piece of music and just embody the spirit of a character. When you hear that Yoda theme, you hear everything that he stands for. Size that matters not, do or do not, there is no try. You can hear all of that in the music. It's special, and again, that's what makes Star Wars such a special experience. And just all of Williams' films.
It's probably the Twin Sunsets for me, John. Yeah. It's just, I think just it kind of bookends Luke's story, from obviously A New Hope right through to, his sort of last physical presence in The Last Jedi. And I think it was just, it's just, there isn't a bad one, to be fair, from John Williams. Even, the sequel stuff, and as you mentioned, obviously Kylo Ren stuff, and the prequel stuff with Duel of Fates and stuff like that. It's just, there's not a bad one, but I think obviously the Imperial March is iconic as well. That's the one that we, as a kid, you fear. You hear that coming in, you're going, no, this is when Vader's going to step in, or the Emperor or something like that.
I find
it just has such an imposing, presence in the film.
The spark as well in The Last Jedi, that was a pretty special one. Yeah. When Luke's obviously facing off against Kylo Ren, his nephew.
Jedi Steps as well, John.
Yeah, that was
the very end of Force Awakens. I loved that as well. I thought that was great. Yeah,
I've not listened to The Spark in such a long time. I have to actually go back and listen to that, because just him kind of doing that, and then I think he says something to 3PO before he walks out as well. I forget what he says to him. Obviously
I think he just winks at him,
yeah, he maybe winks. Because I think he can't pick up and look. That's perhaps a giveaway afterwards that he's not really there. But watching it, you just think he's kind of, oh my God, he's here. But he actually can't sense him. He realises he's not there physically. And he kind of winks at him as if, keep your trap shut, you chrome dome. Because you'll give it the game away here. I'm not here, I'm playing an elaborate trick on my nephew to make him look like a complete twat. But there is, even in the sequels, there's some brilliant... Chrome Dome, by the way, was terrible, apart from John Boyega's the Finn character. Chrome Dome. That's a Milky Way term, son. That's not a Star Wars galaxy term.
I think there was a bastard dropped in there as well, wasn't there?
It was, yep. You murdering bastard or something. Yeah. That's not what we do in Star Wars. We don't swear like that. You've got Nerf Header and Banfa Poodoo and things like that. You've got to think outside the box. I agree with some of the naysayers that say George kind of stipulated that you can't have proper screws and bricks that are reflective of our life. You need to be distinctly different to show that this is an alien landscape, even though there's humans there, sort of bipedal human forms. This is alien. You need to keep that sort of disconnect going, and be using things like bastard and Chrome Dome. It's like, what the fuck are you doing here?
I mean, I know that, does Han not say, I'll see you in hell or something like that in Empire Strikes Back, but yeah, I mean, there's little slips in there every now and again. But John, talking about Han as well, and talking about this print, this is the one where Greedo shoots first. Han doesn't.
Steve, I've never fucking seen that.
Sorry, the other way about Greedo doesn't get a chance.
Yeah, Han shoots first.
Han shoots in cold blood.
Yeah.
And it's something that a generation, maybe 2 or 3 generations have not seen.
I've never seen it. I don't recall.
Changed the narrative to the character, that he wasn't this cold-blooded killer, and it's silly. It's something that I don't think they should have changed. And I don't think it's something that they could change with a believable sort of visual. Because you look, they're only maybe about 2 feet away from each other. How could you miss?
Yeah, I know.
It's ridiculous, but
and
Steve, it's a terrible animated shot as well.
That changes the whole structure of the film, because Han is a guy you can't really trust. He's a maverick. He's a bit of a But he's like, oh, he's a fucking bounty hunter on this. He's not a bounty hunter, but he's like a smuggler. That's the word I'm looking for. And so when he disappears and then comes back, the original shot or the original film, that would have been an incredible moment, because you're talking about this guy who's fundamentally changed his ways. And then obviously you get the infamous Leia. I knew you weren't just about the money. She turns into Queen Elizabeth for a moment. She's American one moment, she's English the next. But that changes the character. So, I mean, there's just moments he's changed that I understand why he's increased the resolution, he's added things in, but there's things that were unnecessary. And that's why I want to see this original version personally. I hope it's something they can expand out into a wide release. I mean, if I could go and watch The Phantom Menace in 3D, I'm certain I would go and watch this. This is a potential maybe not once in a fucking lifetime, that's hyperbolic, but it's certainly it's like you've got a small opportunity to see this kind of thing, and I really hope they do a wide release of it. Stephen, we have got another thing she's talking about here. I don't actually know the context because I've not read it, but she's talking about expanding genres with Andor. And I was listening to Mark Hamill the other day, because obviously announced he's kind of done with Star Wars. That's him, he's finished. Can't really see him coming back. And he was joking, I can't recall who it was he was interviewing or being interviewed by, but he mentioned that, look, they have to get away from this time zone or this time period, get away from my character, other characters. There's a whole galaxy out there, there's an open sandbox, different genres, you can do fucking rom-coms, you can do horror, you can do anything you want. So I just find it interesting that Kennedy's kind of continuing on with that in terms of expanding genres. For me, I want to see them continuing on with Andor. I thought that, not Andor, the actual character, we know he dies, but with that kind of storytelling, it's a little bit more drama driven, it's a little bit more mature, it's more gritty, it's getting away from fucking space wizards and lightsaber battles and the Force. It's delving into ordinary people doing extraordinary things in this galaxy and how it can snowball to the point where you've got Luke coming in and blowing the Death Star up.
We talked about it in our Andor review, in terms of certain characters and the way they've been designed and surviving the story.
Yep.
And the likes of Claire and Bix, you know, and even
one
Dedra.
of them is niece, whose name eludes me.
Yeah.
Interesting character.
It's is it not Vel?
Vel, yeah.
Well,
potential with those characters.
Well, there is, John, and there's potential to have contained stories within that time period between A New Hope and going forward. Obviously, with the actors, the way they look, you don't want to go too far in advance because you'd have to age them up, but you can have these characters doing different missions and that kind of thing. And we did talk about that. We talked about, obviously, perhaps maybe Clea, Bix and Vel maybe helping the Bothans, you know, recover the stolen plans from, obviously, the second Death Star or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's all these possibilities, but this is what you've mentioned it time and time again. They have to mine from what they've got and expand on it.
Yeah.
And I get what Mark Hamill's saying, and I do agree with him. I think they've got to move. That's how I wasn't for the whole Rey trilogy thing, the episode 10, 11 and 12.
Because it's connected.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Just leave it, you know. Concentrate on these well-established and developed characters. You know, Wilmon as well. You don't see him in Rogue One, but you don't know what happens to him either.
Yeah.
And there's potential there. And when they do other web series, this is what they're going to have to do, develop the characters. I'm not saying Tony Gilroy has to carry every series that they do, but get that level of quality and quality of the writing.
We want variety, Stephen.
Development and character, you know, just fleshing out characters that the audience can connect with.
I think there has to be a realisation that Star Wars started off as something that was viewed as kid-friendly, space opera, Fast and Furious, 2-hour-long movie, and it was predominantly for younger generations. But now those generations who enjoyed the film initially in the 70s have grown up. They're in their 50s, 60s, 40s. Yeah. My generation, 30s, also get the sort of backdraft of it and watched the movies and were inspired by them. We're all getting older now. We're not kids anymore, and whilst you can still bond with kid-friendly sort of genres and movies, that's what Pixar have done so well over the years. They take a concept that's great for a kid, can connect with inner kid and adults, but they also have dual levels of sort of storytelling where if you know, as an adult, and you can appreciate a deeper meaning in the story. But they have to realise that there's older people now who grew up with this franchise and sort of cater to them as well with stories like Andor and other stuff. I understand sometimes it'll not be populist, you'll not get great viewing numbers, but ultimately you've got to overlook that and think about legacy and sort of residual interest, because give it time and people will come round to Andor, and the masses, they will fucking watch it because it's great storytelling. I've seen people talking about they don't even like Star Wars, but they love Andor.
Yeah. I do think they are trying in terms of trying to cater for different demographics, because as you have mentioned, obviously when Star Wars came out, they didn't have this grand plan for multiple storylines. It was a film, that just exceeded expectations, and they've had to expand on that. And if you look at Andor as an example, the writing of the characters shows that it can be done. You can have these spin-offs with these other characters now because people care about the characters. It's not a flash in the pan character that's easily disposable, because we knew Cassian Andor, that is, was surviving Andor, the series. We knew Mon Mothma was making it out because we've seen her in Return of the Jedi, but it was all these other characters that had to be established and developed very quickly that we would worry about them. And they did a good job of that. And that's what they've got to do. John, the Skeleton Crew is one that I've not seen. Some people really like it. Some people.
Was that the kid friendly? Was that the kid one?
Yeah.
I watched the first couple of episodes. I did like it. I did get a bit bored with it though, because there's only so much as a 36-year-old guy you can kind of connect with, like 5 and 6-year-old kids. It's like fucking hell. Yeah. And even Jude Law coming in as a Jedi, that should be something that. But I get bored with it. But that's on me. To be fair, the storytelling, it was almost Goonies-like. If I'm thinking of the same one, it was interesting the way that they kind of put it together. It was a really interesting concept. But I mean, Stephen, she's touching on it there. She's saying exactly what we said. They're in a position now where it's broadened the possibility of stories and filmmakers. They can bring in to tell stories that mean something to them. It doesn't necessarily have to connect to every little thing that's been done in Star Wars. It can actually be a standalone story that then builds into many other stories. That's the key for Star Wars moving forward. You need to have brilliant minds who perhaps aren't just Star Wars fans, but they're into science fiction, they're into multiple genres, and they can see a way where it can fit into that galaxy in a way that makes sense and is organic.
It's easy for me to say, and I said it at the time as well, but I know everyone doesn't agree with a certain way, and said when the takeover happened, it would have been probably better if they just went down the road of standalone, disconnected stories. But a lot of people would have hated that. I get that, and it would have been a risk as well financially. They had to recoup a lot of money. Obviously, what they paid George Lucas to hand over the rights. I think it was just under $3 billion or whatever it may have been. But so I understand that, and it's very easy for me to say in hindsight now that the sequel trilogy just wasn't as good as it could have been, and I think most people would agree with that. But at the time we were all caught up in it. Oh, can't wait! We were all very much excited about it. So it's easy for me to say now, they probably shouldn't have done that. They couldn't really see that at the time, but at the same time,
we weren't saying that at the time.
Too much of a risk not to do it.
Yeah,
financially.
No, Stephen, we were caught up with the buzz at the time. We weren't saying let's do a story set in the Old Republic. We wanted to see Luke coming back, we wanted to see Han coming back, wanted to see Leia coming back. We were all caught up in it. And obviously moving forward we were disappointed because it get progressively worse and worse and worse. And they've got a lot of making up to do in terms of film. This Ryan Gosling one will be interesting. I think that the next Star Wars film is going to be make or break for the franchise in terms of feature-length films. Because they can't keep releasing shit movies. At some point they're going to have to get back onto a sort of solid foundation and releasing great films again to repair the damage that's been done, reputational damage. And to bring in a Ryan Gosling who is an A-list actor, right off the bat I'm concerned, because that's not something Star Wars has been synonymous with. It's been synonymous with making stars out of unknown actors. Harrison Ford aside.
Maybe that's what it needs though, John. Maybe it needs a big name. I don't know. time will tell again. It will be all in hindsight once it comes out and we can analyse it. But it's one thing, obviously, doing stories away from what we're used to, and that's why I don't agree with continuing the story of Rey Skywalker, because I don't think there's any need for it. I think we know very much the way that we knew at the end of Return of the Jedi, that where things were going, and things would go bad at some point.
They have to. All stay. You can't have a nice happily ever after story. It doesn't make for a compelling film. You need to have a villain coming in.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people prefer just Return of the Jedi, and that's the end. I get that
because it makes sense on a sort of symmetry level on a story in terms of Skywalkers, the proper Skywalkers. Because Rey's not a fucking Skywalker. That's not how it works.
I would like to see them going back the way and doing a Palpatine sort of thing. I'd love to see his rise, from humble beginnings with obviously. Plagius.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that sort of stuff playing out, but I mean, there's time, they don't have to. I mean, especially a story like that, you don't have to have any of the original actors, for it. So, I mean, I think in terms of this film coming out, obviously in a few years' time with Ryan Gosling is going to be make or break. It's really going to decide for Lucasfilm where they are with the franchise in terms of feature films and web series, because I think more or less the web series have worked to an extent. Obi-Wan was good
in parts, yeah.
I think Ahsoka was good in parts as well, and obviously the first two series of The Mandalorian were fantastic, as well as obviously 2 series of Andor. There's been more hits, I would say, than so far.
Look, you admitted the acolyte. Steve, I mean, I think... I think a way that... And it's never going to happen because we know why. But Starfighter, I personally would love to see like a Top Gun in Star Wars, where you've got... I mean, also the original one maybe to a lesser extent, but certainly Maverick, the way that there was depth to that story, he was harkening back to his youthful days and he was almost nostalgic. And the way it connected in with like the sun's coming in and whatnot, or the sun coming in. Just an interesting way to kind of develop the character and develop that kind of action-heavy story and make it a little bit more drama, a little bit more human condition. You could do things with a kind of Starfighter film with a Ryan Gosling's a phenomenal actor, man. The guy can do everything. He's chameleon. He can do romance, drama, action. He can do comedy. He's a fucking unbelievable talent. So you could take him in and do something really deep with us. I don't want to see them doing like a fluffy, multi-demographic, hollow husk of a movie, and it's about a starfighter and a sort of fighter squadron of X-wing pilots or whatnot. I want to see them doing something really interesting with it, a bit of meat to the bones of the story. I don't know how they're going to make it happen. My concern is this is a sort of offshoot of the Patty Jenkins film where she was doing a sort of fighter film.
Yeah.
And they've took the bare bones of that concept and brought on a new director and threw Ryan Gosling in. I understand Ryan's a massive Star Wars fan, but I don't know, man. I don't know. In terms of Palpatine, Stephen, I mean, fucking hell, would you be... I don't know where de-aging is now. Would you want to see them do like Ian McDermott, de-aged and going back and doing like...
McDermott. I know that a lot of people would disagree with that, John, because Ian McDermott is Emperor Palpatine. I understand that. But I think if you're going back the way to do his origins, someone like Tom Hiddleston or something like that. Yeah, someone just classically trained that, that can carry that sort of pressure, and obviously deliver, a very good performance. But I think a lot of people were the same when Ewan McGregor was cast as Obi-Wan Kenobi, because I think most people would have known him from Shallow Grave and Trainspotting at that point, and thinking, what? This junkie from Edinburgh is going to be playing the Alec Guinness guy. And I think there was a lot of that at the time as well. But Tom Hiddleston's probably more established in his career than Ewan McGregor was at that point. But you've got to sometimes take those chances. But I don't think Sebastian Stan's going to ever come in as Luke Skywalker. I think that moment's past.
That's a shame as well.
I just think that. I think if they were going to do it, they wouldn't have done the whole deep fake thing.
and why they're going down this route with the Rey film.
Yeah.
Where they're basically going to tell a story of Luke Skywalker, but better in their eyes. Not for everyone else, of course.
Totally.
Where she's going to go off and build a new Jedi Academy and bring through a new wave of Jedi talent, Jedi, period. But I mean, we could have done that with Luke without the unnecessary sort of collapse of it all.
But I think with Luke being her master, it is through Luke in a way. You know, that's the way you've got to look at it, I suppose. She wouldn't have became the level that she was. She had the potential. I think they had that line in The Mandalorian. You know, until he masters his abilities, he'll be, you know, a danger to himself. You know, talking about Grogu. Yeah. And I think that was the same with Rey as well. I think she needed that sort of influence, that knowledge, and that training from Luke. We didn't really see too much of it in The Last Jedi, but that is the problem with film and Star Wars films. You've not got time to do that. You've got time to do it in a web series, but you can't do it in a film.
They filled it in and explained it by saying she's got the ancient Jedi texts, so she just crammed all that in, studied really hard, and lo and behold, she could do Force FaceTiming and Force healing and all sorts of other things. It's incredible. Really precocious talent, is Rey. Got a real eye for picking up on things quickly. But
I bypassed the mind compressor.
I know. Fuck. It's painful to think about it now. And it's not me doing a disservice to Daisy. I actually quite like Daisy. She seems a nice enough person, but character's just deeply uninteresting. I'm not really interested in seeing that story continuing. I'd like to see them go off and do something different. And we've seen the bar raised tremendously with Andor and with Gilroy. I think moving forward, the biggest thing for Lucasfilm and Disney is selecting the heir apparent to Kathleen Kennedy, because she is going to leave. She's in her 60s now, she's not getting younger. She'll want a change of scenery as well, without all the hassle that comes, rightly or wrongly, from the Star Wars fandom. And getting that next move is absolutely correct, is absolutely paramount for the sort of parent company Disney and the subsidiary company Lucasfilm. I don't want to see a Dave Filoni. I'm not even sure I want to see Jon Favreau now. I'm more in the mindset of, and I don't think Tony Gilroy would be interested. I think he's a purely producing sort of figure and writer, sort of script doctor, I think they called it with Carrie Fisher. But someone of his ilk, who's not got an emotional attachment, who's able to take a seat back and then employ people with an emotional attachment in a sort of project by project basis. That's the whole point of a fucking president of something. You're micromanaging the film, the TV. You get to decide who comes in. You shouldn't have an agenda. You shouldn't be positioning yourself in and influencing things. I want to see someone who is sort of impartial, a fence sitter.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy, admittedly, is not a Star Wars fan, John, but I think she spent enough time in that environment to get to understand the sort of fundamental storyboards and legacy of the whole franchise as well. And she should have known better with her decision making in terms of that sequel trilogy. Having J.J. Abrams doing one film, having Rian Johnson doing the second film, and having Colin Trevorrow doing the third film, and it just, even that, even before that played out, I just wasn't comfortable with that. I felt it should have been one director who was committed to telling that story from start to finish. And someone, as you said, they don't have to know Star Wars inside out, but if they understand the characters, and that's something Tony Gilroy was very good at, was understanding the characters. Yep. He understood the character of Mon Mothma. Prior to, obviously, Rogue One and the deleted scenes from Episode 3, Mon Mothma's total appearance was maybe under 2 minutes in Return of the Jedi. He managed to encapsulate what that potential of that character could be. I'm going to say going forward, but obviously the story's going back a way and telling a sort of, uprising. But he understood that, and that's what you needed for that sequel trilogy. You needed someone come in that was aware of Luke, Han and Leia, and 3PO, etc., but could take it in a different direction, than what we got, which was very disjointed and inconsistent. And it was almost like J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson were at loggerheads at a point.
JJ's just... I mean, he's a decent filmmaker and writer, but the guy's always shat the bed when it comes to finishing things. I mean, he shat the bed. I'm pretty sure he was involved in Lost when it came out, and then he buggered off. Didn't want to finish it. Shat the bed with Mission Impossible. He's left it to Christopher McQuarrie. Shat the bed with Star Wars. Had to come back and finish it. Made a complete arse of it. Shat the bed with Star Trek. The guy's got previews for sort of rebooting things or introducing concepts, and then he can't really finish it. He's got issues with finishing. So, I mean, the least said about him the better, really. And his decision to kill off Han without giving the original free screen time is, I mean, that's going to haunt that guy. Yeah. Absolute shite baggery. To not introduce Luke in a more meaningful way. I mean, we all know, Stephen, we've spoke the hind legs off it, but there was a clear moment in The Force Awakens where you could have done it. And it could have transformed the entire trilogy.
After Han death, wasn't it?
Yeah, either that or the moment afterwards when the lightsaber they're tussling, Finn and Kylo, and it obviously flies by him and goes to Rey. That could have went to Luke. And he could have come
Han
in.
was already away at that point, though, John, but I get what you're saying. There was missed opportunities, there definitely was. And,
no, I mean, they just didn't have to kill fucking Han off, Stephen. That's the point I'm making. I understand it was probably what Harrison wanted.
Harrison Ford coming back, wasn't it? He would have instilled, I'm not coming back unless you kill the character off, you know. But
bring him back.
Even if they knew that, they could have put Luke in a lot earlier than they did, you know.
Or just say, look, I understand Harrison, but what, just kill you off the next film. We've got this cool fucking moment. Ultimately, you're going to get killed off and then we're going to make you come back as some long-haired fucking ghost, even though you're not a Jedi, in The Rise of Skywalker, and it will make no sense. So it's like, killed you off, fucked the whole story, didn't give the original trio a chance to come back, and then you came back anyway as some sort of pish-stained, Parkhead, junkie version of Harrison Ford's Han Solo. And that's a really specific description I've gave that only a really small amount of people on planet Earth will understand. Needless to say, Parkhead, real shithole, junkies aplenty, certainly in my time, and they looked like that. Stubble, just fucking ghastly. No offence to Harrison, unbelievably handsome guy his entire life, but much like Paul McCartney, the stubble's not doing anything for you, mate, at this time in your age and your life. Just shave it off. And that's, I mean, that's numerous times now I've dropped Paul McCartney's name, but it really had to be said because someone has to have an intervention with Paul and tell him that stubble has to go, son.
Yeah.
You're
it's
way
probably
too
something
old.
to do with the face tagging, John.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking more like his father. Stephen, you're in this Beatles group on Facebook, and you famously posted up a photo of him and his father, which kind of kills the whole Paul is dead, Billy Campbell fucking nonsense instantaneously, because you look at Paul, clearly early 60s with his father, and then you look at Paul now, who's meant to be some doppelganger double who was flown in from Canada and got all this incredible plastic surgery in the 60s and looked the exact same as Paul, had the same brilliant musical brain, the same melodic brilliance, the same ability to play fucking infinite amounts of instruments, knows all the memories. But you look at him now, he looks like his father. He looks the fucking exact same as his dad. So if he's a double from Canada, how can he look like his father? How can his kids all look like him? They all look like Paul McCartney. So yeah, it's fucking mental. I searched Paul up the other day and it was coming up with that shite face comparisons.
That's perhaps maybe a podcast in itself.
Yeah.
We could do.
Yeah, we have to touch on that. Absolutely, the whole Paul is dead thing.
I think there's a conversation for over an hour in that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just Paul. I mean, apparently John did it as well. John had a double as well, according to these fruitcakes. He get bored and went off and done other things.
Yeah.
Fucking mental. Because he cut his hair.
Elvis.
What was the name of it? The war film he did?
How I Won the War?
It's actually a really good film, by the way. It's like those sort of... What are those English comedy films from that time? You know what I'm talking about? Sort of surreal English comedy films. They were floating around 70s, 80s.
Carry On?
The Carry On films. It's almost like that. I really enjoyed that film. I thought John was brilliant in it, by the way, for a guy. He also dabbled with acting in the the Beatles movies, but in the main, not an actor. But I thought he'd done really well in that. Obviously cut his hair, and that sparked rumours that, oh my God, Paul's dead and they've replaced him with some Canadian guy. He's an inch taller. He's wearing his hair to the left instead of the right. Oh my, he's got a mark in his face. Oh my God. Fucking guy's 7 years older than what he was when he first appeared in the scene. Fuck's sake, people change when they get older. I've changed when I've got older. Stephen's changed when he's got older. That's life, bitch. Father Time has its way with you. It's fucking shit. Shit. Anyway, I digress. What's your thoughts on the topics we touched on? Thoughts on the passing of, and I'm blanking on his name, which is absolutely fucking Brian Wilson. I'm having a Joe Biden dementia moment. We're an hour and 14 minutes in. I don't think the viewers can fully appreciate just how unbelievably fucking warm it is in this room. Just to paint a picture for you, I've got 2 lights, look at that, beaming on me. I've got a dog lying behind me, 2 monitors. It's unbelievably warm. It's like its own fucking weather system in here. I feel like I'm in Dubai instead of Glasgow. So, please spare the Biden moment. Brian Wilson, passing to Brian Wilson. If you've got anything to say about him, his legacy, share it down below in the comment section. Thoughts on Star Wars, the original 77 film reels have been discovered in somewhere in Britain. The British Film Institute have showcased it at a film festival 3 days ago, 12th of June. Do you want to see it getting a wide release? Do you want to see the original cut? Potentially, according to Kathleen Kennedy, the very first cut of the film. Anything you've got to say about that? Anything else we touched upon on the show, stream, whatever you want to fucking call it, podcast? Comment down below and share your thoughts on it. Like the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications straight to your eyes. And all that's left to be said, really, same thing over on Twitch, follow button, notifications button over on Twitch. Sees live on a different platform. How could I forget? And until the next time, all that's left to be said is thank you for watching us, and bye-bye.